Episode 72 of 211's Baseball Talk is here. We're going to talk all about the Blue Jays series in Cleveland, their two-game sweep of the Miami Marlins. We'll talk about injury disclosure, which has become a hot-button topic over the past week, and maybe even a little bit more. Stay tuned. 211's Baseball Talk, episode 72 starts right after this. That was Balanced by Infinite, walking you into episode 72 of 211's Baseball Talk. My name is Dylan Baker. Joined beside me, as always, my dad, Chris. How you doing today?
I'm good, Dylan. I'm just fantastic. It's bright and squirrely, and yeah.
A lot of times for scheduling purposes, we don't because we're both pretty busy. We record early in the mornings, and this is one of those days. And those are the episodes where you'll see the sun hit me in different ways throughout the episode. There have been times where it cuts away from me and the sun's hitting my face one way, and then it cuts back and it's a completely different way. So if you see that in today's episode, although it is a bit of a gloomy day today, that will be why, as the COVID cut has begun to intensify here. Still not able to get a haircut just yet. I cannot wait until the hairdressers open up. That will be a good day for me, and I'm sure many others across the province. Anyway, diving right into things, the Blue Jays went to Cleveland, and on Friday night they opened a series versus them in some pretty horrid weather conditions. Cleveland got things going in the first as Eddie Rosario singled home 2 versus Hyunjin Ryu to make it 2-0 early. After that, it was an offensive onslaught for the Jays. A Santiago Espinal ground out in the top of the second made it 2-1. I promise there's real offense coming. Then Danny Jansen doubled home one more to tie things up and headed to the bottom of the second. In the third, Randall Grichuk doubled home a run to make it 3-2. Then Lourdes Gurriel Jr. doubled home a run to make it 4-2. That was followed by a Joe Panik rocket of a home run to extend the Jays' lead to 6-2. In the top of the fifth, Lourdes Gurriel doubled home 2 more. Then Panik singled to make it 9-2. A sixth inning double from Santiago Espinal made it 11-2, and while there were a few pitches thrown in the bottom of the seventh after a lengthy delay, the game was officially called. Jays win 11-2. Game 2 was postponed to Sunday as Ross Stripling took the mound versus Aaron Savale in Game 1 of a doubleheader. A Bo Bichette force out in the third gave the Jays the first run of the game as they led 1-0. In the top of the fourth, Teoscar Hernandez went yard to give the Jays a 2-0 advantage. Then Rowdy Tellez also put one out a batter later to make it 3-zip. In the bottom of the fifth, Ross Stripling allowed a homer to Canadian Josh Naylor, and it was 3-1. In the sixth, Charlie Montoyo took Stripling out, despite his very efficient pitch count, and put Rafael Dolis in an effort to secure the win of that game. In the top of the seventh, a Vladdy sac fly made it 4-1. Then Jordan Romano came in to get the save, his third of the year. In the second game, Steven Matz was matched up against Sam Hentges. The Jays got on the board in the third inning with a bases-clearing Teoscar Hernandez double. Randall Grichuk then followed that up with a double to make it 4-0. In the bottom of the sixth, after a Santiago Espinal error, Steven Matz unraveled. Rene Rivera doubled to make it 4-1. Then Ahmed Rosario singled home another. Jose Ramirez singled to make it 4-3. Then a double play ball off the bat of Harold Ramirez tied things up. In the top of the seventh against Emmanuel Clase, one of the toughest arms in the big leagues, with Jonathan Davis on, Marcus Semien singled to make it 5-4 Jays. In the bottom of the seventh, though, Tyler Chatwood, still on the mound after coming in for Matz in the sixth inning, walked 3 straight with 1 out to load the bases. Then he walked another to tie the game as Chatwood, who had problems with his command last year, those problems were reappearing in the second half of that doubleheader. Anthony Castro came in with the bases loaded and 1 out to face Jose Ramirez, who very rarely strikes out. And Ramirez hit a fly ball to right. It was a sacrifice fly, or more of a line drive to right. A sacrifice fly to win the game. Jays split the doubleheader, but won the series. We'll talk about the bullpen fiasco in the third game of the series, second of the doubleheader, once we talk about the Miami Marlins series as well. Putting that aside, 2 out of 3 from Cleveland isn't bad.
No, it's not bad. I mean, Cleveland, you should be sweeping right now. But other than that, I mean, we'll take 2 out of 3 in any game, in any series that's played, including in Cleveland. But obviously, that's a series they should have swept.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. And we'll talk about the reasons why they should have swept that later. I want to call everybody's attention to something. In last week's episode, we were predicting, and we'll do the same again, predicting the next two series for the Blue Jays. And I was hesitant to say that this Cleveland series would be a breeze because I thought their pitching was just so good. Well, the Jays didn't have to face Shane Bieber, and you mentioned it. You said Cleveland, I'm not worried about. The Jays should be able to beat Cleveland. I'm worried about Miami. Well, sure enough, the offense was not the problem against Cleveland. So I wanted to give you a little shout out for your prediction there.
Well, thanks. That's good. Unfortunately, I didn't know what would happen with Chatwood, but
Yeah, I don't think
uh,
anybody did.
no. But well, I mean, you just have to look to last year to find out that was the wrong move. But
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, yeah, the offense was good. I mean, it was good that series and even in Miami, which I know we're going to talk about, but yeah, no, I thought that it would be a good series, a well played series for the Blue Jays in Cleveland, and for the most part, it was.
Yeah, no, really good series for the Jays. Taking 2 out of 3 on the road is always nice. On Tuesday, the Jays were back in Buffalo for their Salem Field opener. Robbie Ray took the hill versus Sandy Alcantara. The Jays got on the board first with a 3-run Vladimir Guerrero Jr. home run in the third inning, I believe, and the crowd erupted. Miami responded in the top of the fifth as Starling Marte doubled home run to make it 3-1. In the bottom of that inning, a Teoscar Hernandez ground out made it 4-1 Jays. In the bottom of the eighth, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. destroyed a ball to make it 5-1, and that ball would have hit the highway if it had not been for the screen. After loading the bases in the ninth, Jordan Romano was able to record a strikeout as the Jays took the opener at Salem Field. Wednesday, Alek Manoah took the hill versus Pablo Lopez. The Marlins got going in the top of the second with a Corey Dickerson home run to center field. The Jays clapped back with a Randall Grichuk homer in the bottom half, tying things up. However, in the third, after a single that hit Manoah by Devers, Jazz Chisholm went deep to the opposite field to make it 3-1. Then, two batters later, Jesus Aguilar yanked a good fastball out to get it up to 4-1 Marlins. In the bottom of the fourth, handsome Randall Grichuk hit one out onto the highway to make it a 2-run game. Starting Marte went yard in the seventh, and the Marlins extended their lead, lowering the Jays' chances to come back. In the bottom of the seventh, a Teoscar Fielder's Choice scored a run to make it 5-3. In the ninth, Reese McGuire got on with a single. Marcus Semien singled, and that prompted Charlie Montoya to pinch run with Jonathan Davis for McGuire. Bo Bichette stepped up to the plate and took a pitch probably 6 inches above the zone down the right field line for a game-tying triple. The Marlins intentionally walked Vladdy and Teoscar to pitch to Grichuk, who had 2 homers already, and he grounded into a fielder's choice. That brought up Joe Panic, and he flew a ball into center that Marte knew he wouldn't be able to throw Vladdy out on, so he kind of just let it drop. It was scored a sacrifice fly, weird play to end the game, and the Jays won 6-5. After that tough loss in Cleveland, a great bounce back for the Blue Jays in the 2 against the Marlins.
Yeah, it was. It was a good bounce back. Obviously, Vladdy, that was great to see him get his first 4-hit game of his career, which was awesome. And I think the Marlins. I didn't think they would be a overly difficult opponent, but I thought they'd be more difficult than Cleveland. I did not see that in this very short series, but I mean, except for even in game two, but I mean, that's just because Manoah couldn't keep the ball in the ballpark. But other than that, everything else was good.
Yeah, no, the Jays were awesome against the Marlins, and you talked about Manoah. We'll get into that in a couple of topics here. But first, let's go back to the Cleveland series. We got a few things to discuss there. Sunday's afternoon game, or I guess they're both in the afternoon. The second game of that doubleheader. Tyler Chatwood was brought in the sixth inning to get out of a jam. Seemed to maybe not have his best command in that sixth inning, but was able to get out of it after allowing a run or two that was inherited from Steven Matz. And then they left him in for the seventh, which I have no problem with because Chatwood's pitched 2 innings before. Everything was good. And then he started to walk guys. And with a guy like Chatwood, who has had command issues in the past, you should probably start doing something the moment he walks the first batter. But I believe Charlie Montoyo waited until the second or third batter. And listen, I see a lot of people blaming Charlie Montoyo. In this situation, you got to put a little bit of the blame on Pete Walker as well, because Pete Walker is advising Charlie on who to go to in the bullpen. And he's the one inevitably making that call to get a guy warming up. So A lot of blame was on Charlie Montoyo, and I agree with it, but I do think that some of the blame needs to go on to Pete Walker. They leave Chatwood in probably too long. He walks home a run. They bring in Anthony Castro to face Jose Ramirez. Castro is mainly a strikeout pitcher. Jose Ramirez does not strike out. Does not strike out.
Yeah.
Like this guy has ridiculously low strikeout numbers. He fought off some really good pitches. Eventually, Castro got an out, but it just so happened that there was a runner at third who could easily tag up, and it was a walk-off sac fly for Cleveland. A lot of people were pointing to that first game of the doubleheader as the reason that the Jays got into that situation when Montoyo went to Dolis and Romano in relief of Ross Stripling, who had a pretty good pitch count. What are your thoughts on that theory? And the
Um,
bullpen management, sorry, in the second game, the whole doubleheader.
yeah, well, the Blue Jays bullpen management has been terrible for the last few series. Something needs to give there. Obviously I've been pretty vocal in the last couple of episodes about my thoughts on Charlie Montoyo's bullpen management. It's no different in Cleveland. They just happen to win a couple of those. Yeah, I mean, obviously now you're down to Chatwood, who has to be in there for longer than he should be. Then you bring in a guy who is a strikeout pitcher against a guy who doesn't strike out. I don't know who was reading the stat sheets for that move, but
I think that
clearly
was more of
they,
an emergency move because they were like, okay, Chatwood can't do this anymore. Let's bring Castro in. Hopefully he can. I think that was because we're in such a bad spot. We've got to bring somebody in.
yeah. Well, either way, it wasn't an impressive finish to that series. Again, a bullpen management issue. That's going to have to be corrected if this is going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, and I think it will be eventually. I think with a lot of injuries and stuff, Montoyo's still trying to find out who he can rely on. And people mentioned that in the first game, um, maybe he shouldn't have gone to Dolis and Romano. And then some people were angry about the fact that Romano didn't throw in both games that day, which I thought was ridiculous.
Yeah,
Because this guy's pumping 100 miles an hour, and he threw. It was a pretty large pitch count. I think he threw like 20 pitches, which for a closer is quite a bit. And I thought that was ridiculous criticism that they were upset that Romano didn't pitch in both games. I have no problem with the way Charlie Montoyo managed his bullpen in the first game. He managed it to win the game. He felt after Ross Stripling gave up a home run in the fifth inning to Josh Naylor that Stripling was starting to lose that effect that he had early on the Cleveland batters a little bit. I love the move. I can't say I love it in hindsight, but I like the move. I understand the move to go to Dolis and then to go to Romano. Maybe ideally you'd like to keep one of them for the second game, but Charlie Montoya wanted to win the game. He didn't care about the second game that was in the back of his mind because he can't see into the future. If he saves Jordan Romano for that second game and the Jays are down 7-3 in the seventh inning of that second game, they're not using Jordan Romano. He can't see into he doesn't have a time machine that tells him, okay, in game two, we're going to be winning. I should keep Jordan Romano for that second game. Obviously, with a good team, you always have a chance to win. And the Jays have a good team. They do. So you always have a shot to win the game. But Charlie Montoyo could not look into his magic crystal ball and say, we're going to need Romano for game two. I have to save him. No, he could not. He won game one. His job is to help the Jays win games as the manager. He managed to win the first game. He did a great job of that. The second game, Chatwood was losing his command. Is the second game Charlie Montoyo's fault? Absolutely it is. Maybe Pete Walker shoulders some of that blame as well. But Charlie Montoyo is mainly to blame for the performance, for the loss in that second game, because he should have gone to the bullpen way earlier, and he didn't. He didn't have Anthony Castro up very quickly when Chatwood was starting to have some problems. And you mentioned that Chatwood was going longer than he should have. He's gone 2 innings before this season, and he's a former starter as well. Plus, he's been arguably the Blue Jays' best reliever up for the first month and a half of the season, and then he started to lose it a little bit. And Charlie Montoyo said that he wanted to get Chatwood's confidence back, which I disagree with. If you're trying to win the game, it doesn't matter about a guy's confidence. You bring the best pitcher in, and he didn't do that, and he didn't warm up Castro in time. And so game two, yes, Charlie Montoyo's fault. Game one, there should be nothing thrown at Charlie Montoyo for that, in my opinion. I understand that you would have put Romano in if it was 3-1, and then it became 4-1. So you put Castro in. I disagree. A save situation is a save situation, and Jordan Romano is your closer. I think everybody's decided that at this point. Jordan Romano is the closer for this team. So I think that I like the move in the first game to go to Romano and Dolis to secure the victory. I think that's what Charlie Montoya was doing. So I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with how we manage it in game two.
Yeah, well, I think Charlie would just needed to know how much Chatwood could chat if Chatwood could Chatwood.
All right. I figured there wasn't going to be a legitimate take when I threw it back to you. Moving on Friday, Joe Panic had a really good game, and he had a pretty good series in Cleveland. Where there's this debate is Joe Panic, who's on a 1-year deal, versus Santiago Espinal, who's likely going to be the Joe Panic of the future for the Blue Jays. When George Springer comes back, when everybody's healthy, you keep Panic on the team for now, right?
Well, yeah, I don't. I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, Panic is helping. It's like putting on a band-aid that's half ripped off already. But otherwise, it's sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But I think yeah, for now, I'd rather see Espinal stay there. But I mean, the veteran presence of Panic certainly helps.
Yeah, Panic's a veteran, but I think he's also right now probably a little bit better of a hitter than Santiago Espinal is, and probably a better defender. I'm not sure. I guess like I want to see Espinal get a chance. He's a younger guy, and I think he'll be with the Jays in the long run. But I think that Panic, if they're going to win now, I think Panic serves them best at the present moment. So we'll see what they decide to do. I mean, it's a tough decision because they're two guys who are very similar in their skill sets. Um, Espinal, obviously younger, less big league experience. So we'll see where they go with that. Moving on to Alek Manoah. He had a bit of a rough game on Wednesday. I believe he allowed 4 runs and 3 home runs in his outing. He didn't really seem to have his command. He was missing in the strike zone quite a bit, and that is what led to his struggles. What were your thoughts on Manoah's performance, and how does he bounce back?
Hashtag bust.
Okay, that's enough. No bust.
No, I think it was a sophomore slump. I think he came back expecting to be dominant like he was in New York, and that always is a recipe for disaster. But I think he'll learn from that. And again, I don't put too much stock in the second start, other than it was awful. And it's only awful because you can't give up that many home runs in a game. That is just awful. He wasn't giving up a lot of hits. He had his strikeouts there every once in a while. So I think there were flashes of New York Manoah, but he certainly served it up on the platter for the Miami Marlins for sure.
Yeah, it wasn't a great outing for Alek Manoah. And I'm kind of happy and relieved that he's struggling now. And if he does have more starts where he struggles, so be it. Because I don't think the Jays are winning a World Series this year. I think next year they have a legitimate shot, and I would rather see him struggle at the big league level now and this year than next year when the Jays are contending for a World Series. And they very well could be with a couple more moves at the deadline. But I think Manoah is going to struggle, obviously, at the big league level. It happens to everybody, and I'm glad that it's happening early. He can look at that and be like, okay, here's what I did wrong. Here's what I did in the minor leagues that I can't do in the big leagues because these are more talented hitters. And the Miami Marlins have one of the worst offenses in baseball, but they're still major league hitters. Jazz
Oh yeah,
Chisholm is a great prospect who's making a mark for the Marlins. Jesus Aguilar was near the league lead in home runs a couple of years ago. So these are big league hitters, and they do have a big league eye. They do have a big league bat. So I think that the difficulties for Manoah were because he might have been trying to throw to these guys as if they were minor leaguers, and part of that falls on Reese McGuire as well, because Manoah likes to say, and he said it after his first start, not after the second one, though, because he didn't want to throw the blame on his catcher. But he said it's 50-50 between me and the catcher. The catcher calls the pitches. He sets up where he wants the pitch to go. And I think that part of that responsibility is Reese McGuire. I'm interested to see if Danny Jansen catches Manoah's next start. But obviously, everybody's going to struggle at the big league level, so I'm not too concerned about it.
no, I think you're going to see some struggles. What I'm curious to see is if he bounces back better than Nate Pearson. Not to compare the two, but
Yeah.
Nate Pearson doesn't handle the struggles very, very well. He has to learn that mentally, especially at the major league level, and I think he's working on that, but he just can't stay healthy enough to work on it. But I think you'll see Manoah, probably. I think he's got more mental resilience. He reminds me of a much more subdued Stroman, but still a Stroman nonetheless, and that he's got that you can't take this away from me kind of attitude, which is good. And so, Stroman had his struggles too early going. It was year 2 and year 3 where he was really starting to get dominant, even after his injury.
Injury updates. Ryan Barucki, I believe I saw he's throwing, but he's not exactly close. George Springer is running, and hopefully he'll have a rehab assignment sometime soon, but he's taking his time. He does not want to rush this and have to fall on the injured list again after playing 4 games. Kevin Biggio with his neck injury is apparently not close. Everybody kind of thought he was getting there. Nope, not close at all. Neither are Julian Merriweather and Thomas Hatch. So despite Hatch being on a rehab assignment, he is reportedly not close, and that could be why they didn't call Hatch up. They didn't wait to start and call Hatch up, and they elected to go with Manoah for the game against the Yankees. Disappointed that Merriweather's not close. Hopefully he figures his injury troubles out soon, and he's able to contribute to the big league club once again. All right, 2 best and the worst for this week. Who is your best hitter for the past week in Blue Jays baseball?
Well, obviously you would call it Vladdy, but we keep saying Vladdy. Like it's just,
Yeah.
But I mean, how do you not give it to him with his first 3-hit game of his 4-hit game of his career? So I got to give it to Vladdy. I feel bad giving it to Vladdy because I continue to give it to Vladdy, but I mean, that's just the season he's having right now. I mean, how do you not? And there's been some good performances out there. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, he continues to run circles around everybody else. And so, again, this week I have to give to Vladdy. It seems like the easy go-to, but really the reality is that's who deserves it most.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Marcus Semien won the American League Player of the Month, so shout out to Marcus Semien. Just to be different, I'll go with Lourdes Gurriel. I think he's turning a corner. He struggled early on, but I think he's starting to find his game a little bit now, and that's been a pleasant sight to see because if he can contribute to this Blue Jays offense, it just deepens that lineup, and that's awesome for the Jays and their playoff push. Who is your best pitcher from the past week in Blue Jays baseball?
All right, this week I'm going to go with Ross the Moss Stripling. That was my.
I don't know
that
if
was
that's
my,
his nickname. I think it's Chicken Strip, not Ross the Moss.
No, he's not mossy. But I have to say, like he has come into a role where he's been the starter, but going this long relief and doing so well with it has been pretty impressive for him. And so to be a little different, since you were different with the hitters, I'm gonna go with Ross Stripling.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for that. I'm going to go with Robbie Ray. He had a very good outing against the Marlins and take it for what it is. I mean, it's the Miami Marlins, right? I mean, who knows how they hit. But Ray had a very good outing, 6 innings, 1-run ball, pitched very well. Could have probably gone into the 7th, but his pitch count was a little elevated, and he didn't seem to have his best stuff in that game. So I'm going to go with Robbie Ray for my best pitcher. Who is your worst overall player, pitcher, or hitter for the past week?
I'm gonna have to say, I don't know. I don't know who is really that bad. I mean, everybody's been pretty average. You might say Reese McGuire was bad, but
Clutch base hit in the 9th, though, in that finale against the Marlins. If he didn't get on, who knows if that rally happens.
yeah, that's true. So, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I find that this week there wasn't really anybody you could put out there as bad. I mean, again, I've already done Montoyo as a throw in, as a throw in worst of the week, even though he's not a player. I'm not going to do that to him again, although I feel it. So player wise, I don't actually have one. I'm going to actually abstain from judgment this week on a
Wow.
worst player.
Wow. So no worst for you. I'm going to have a worst. Tyler Chatwood, bad outing against Cleveland. That was really bad. And he.
I guess that's true. But I guess I kind of expect that from Chatwood. So I'm not.
Well, Chatwood was so good for the first month and a half of the season, and then he's just lost it in his past few outings, and that was bad for Tyler Chatwood and for the Blue Jays, who I think depend on Chatwood quite a bit because David Phelps is hurt, Julian Merriweather's hurt. Phelps isn't coming back. We hope Merriweather will, but who knows at this point. So we'll see. We'll see what's happening over there. But I mean, Tyler Chatwood is the worst of the week. He allowed 2 runs to score. I think 2 inherited runners when Steven Matz was lifted in the 6th inning, and then he allowed the game tying run, and the run that scored to win it was charged to him as well. So Tyler Chatwood, not a great performance. for the Blue Jays on Sunday, and he is my worst of the week. All right, moving on to a topic that's more league wide, and that is injury disclosure from managers. We've seen a lot of Blue Jays fans and Blue Jays reporters complain about Charlie Montoyo's lack of transparency when it comes to injuries, saying that George Springer was just fatigued and then he was on the injured list. That Ryan Baracki was just sore and then he's on the injured list. That these guys are just tired or sore, or they need a couple days. AJ Cole was sore yesterday, and or yesterday being Wednesday, the time of this recording, and then he was placed on the injured list a couple hours after that. But the Jays aren't the only ones who experience that from their manager, as Joe Girardi does a similar thing with the Philadelphia Phillies. He said Bryce Harper will be available to pinch hit. He's just dealing with a little something right now, and then the next day Harper was placed on the injured list. Aaron Boone often does the same with the New York Yankees. He says, oh, they'll be fine. They're just taking a day, and then boom, on the injured list. So it seems to be something that's going on around baseball. I wanted to get your take on this because the argument can be made that the media and the public deserve transparency from their team, and when it comes to injury disclosure. But the other side that was being argued that I hadn't thought of before, and that could just be my ignorance to it, but I heard that somebody say that it's strategic for the manager not to say that a guy is not available or that the guy is hurt, because if there's a team that's playing the Phillies and Bryce Harper is available on the bench, then they start game planning for whether Harper gets brought in versus Harper sitting out. For the Blue Jays, if George Springer is standing on that bench and is available to pinch hit, then there's a team that's going to be game planning for George Springer to come in and pinch hit, and they don't want to bring maybe a lefty in to face a lefty or they're hesitant to bring in a lefty because they know that Springer can come in and pinch hit. That's big, right? And so I understand that side of it. I would love to see injuries disclosed because I think it's information that as fans we want to know. But I understand the side of not wanting to disclose it. What are your thoughts on it?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with the second option. I think that's exactly what's happening. And I don't know that fans deserve full disclosure on it. I mean, I guess if you're buying tickets, maybe, if you were buying a ticket just to come see Springer and you think there's even a hope he could come in to be a pinch hitter and that's why you bought your ticket, then fine, that's frustrating. But from a competitive perspective, certainly the second point you just made is a very valid one, and one that I think that those managers are all using, including Montoyo. The Jays had more of a problem with this with the front office a couple of years ago, where even the front office wasn't disclosing injuries. We don't see that now. Not that we get as much access to the front office during COVID times anyway, but I don't know that you would still see that now. I think they leave that in Montoyo's hands for those very reasons. Let's see if there's a competitive advantage to worrying that Springer may come in and pinch hit. There probably is. To worrying that maybe Romano is available if he's tweaked something. There is, because people are going to plan their hitters, they're going to plan their lineups, they're going to plan their pitching out based on the fact that there's potential for one of your best players to still come in, even if in your heart that's not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was very much on the side of, oh my God, tell us if this player is hurt. But when the Jays were in Oakland, and when this argument was brought up to me, then I started thinking about it. And I was like, well, when the Jays were in Oakland and Springer was first hurt after that Atlanta series, they couldn't get anybody up because of COVID protocols. So they left Springer on the bench for 2 games, and the A's had to fear George Springer coming in as a pinch hitter, had to plan their hitters around George Springer coming in or plan their pitchers, sorry, around George Springer coming in as a pinch hitter. So that provided a huge advantage to Charlie Montoyo versus saying, oh, well, we've got this guy who is available on the bench and George Springer is not. Well, then they're gonna be way less hesitant to say, okay, we're gonna go to the lefty here to face Joe Panic, for example, right? So I understand the competitive advantage, and I would like to know because I'm a passionate fan, and I think a lot of people are passionate fans. And the thing is, if there is a competitive advantage, and if that has been decided, then we need people to stop getting angry when managers don't disclose an injury, because people get furious. They're like, "Oh, Charlie Montoyo, what are you doing? This is terrible." Well, if Charlie Montoyo feels like his team is better off by saying that Jordan Romano is available in the bullpen or that George Springer is available off the bench, but they're not, because the team is scared of those players and they have to game plan around those players, that is a competitive advantage, and you should let the Blue Jays have that. You don't need to know information that much that you can't accept Charlie Montoyo saying, "Oh, he's sore, but he's available to come in and pitch." So I completely understand the competitive aspect of that, and I don't disagree with it at all. And I think that it has opened my mind to that side of things, because as a passionate fan, as a guy who hosts a podcast, it's nice to know before we bash somebody like, "Oh, this guy's had a terrible week," to know that he's hurt, that he's not playing well because he's hurt, right?
Yeah.
But if that provides a competitive advantage to the Blue Jays, to whatever team may use that, I get it. I really do. And I, for one, will stop complaining. And I think that has to stop around the league, because people are making jokes about Montoyo, saying this guy is sore. And then, oh, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. Like, I get it. It's funny to an extent, because he said that Springer was tired and then he got put on the injured list and still hasn't come back. But there's that competitive aspect to it that I feel like people overlook, and they shouldn't be doing that. So I don't mind the competitive balance, non-injury disclosure to the media and the fans. That concludes episode 72 of 211's Baseball Talk. We thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again next week with another great episode.